Block Yabada. We are up to the Kuf Samach Beis. Actually, we're up to Kuf Samach Beis, Amud Beis on top of the page. Just briefly remind you, we're learning the dinim of shtaris. So the last thing we learned was we made a special takana. At the very last line of a shtar should be a recap of what the content of the shtar is. So you say like kaninim in minay, we made it as kinyan on everything that was written until now. And the reason for that special takana is because Adam sometimes don't sign right next to the bottom line; they leave a gap, and we are very worried that somebody who might not be that honest will fill in the gap and add something that wasn't part of their agreement. So we made a special law that the last line of the shtar, we don't learn anything new from that last line. So what do we do with the last line? Just the recap of whatever it was written in the shtar before. So even if there's a gap of one, sometimes the Adim will leave a gap of one line, and sometimes they don't leave a gap of one line. They sign next to it. We don't care, because either way, we said the last line doesn't count. Because we don't know these Adim, did they sign right next to the shtar or did they leave a gap? So we made a rule. The last line doesn't count. But if it's, let's say, 2 lines before the Adim leave a gap of 2 lines, that's going to be a problem. That shtar is puzzle. And why is that shtar puzzle? Right away, it's puzzle because we're inviting the lender, let's say, to fill in both lines, knowing that we won't trust the last line, but the penultimate line we will trust. So he'll fill in both lines, and the last line he'll do a recap, and then the line before that he'll put in a condition or whatever he wants. He can put in or make an appoint to get whatever he wants. He can add in. So therefore, if there's a 2-line gap in between, is fraught with a problem, and you're you're creating a temptation for the malva to cheat. But so therefore, 2 lines are puzzle, 1 line is kosher. If let's say the get, if let's say you what do you call it? If 2 lines before the end of the shtar, yes, if you left a gap of 1 line, and the line before that is actually machlekes is shaynim, and we say we don't learn from the last line. According to Rashbam, in all cases, we don't learn from the last line. But even if there's a gap of 1 line, the summary line. So even if there's but that was the takana, make a summary, because we're not going to learn from it, so might as well just do a summary. So if there was a gap of 1 line, and the line before that, according to Rashbam, whatever is written in the line before that, we don't learn from either. That's why it's a summary. Others say no. If there's a gap of 1 line, then the line before that we will learn from it. It's only the very last line that we don't want to learn from, and therefore we make a takana. You know what? The very last line we should make a summary. But the Rashbam says again, it's a big machar shaynim. If you add the words shored v'kayim at the very end, which we learned before, the finality, then you can learn new things from the very last written line, because it said right afterwards shored v'kayim. There's nowhere else for him to add anything. Others disagree. Okay, so now we are up to the Gemara Kuf Samach Beis on the base. So we said 2 lines is a disqualification because 2 lines allows them to fill in both lines, and the very last line we want to learn from, but the penultimate line. Ask the Gemara, who have a question. Shita umachzama, the way Taisus learns, one is not interesting. So Taisus learns shita umachzama means that it doesn't mean there was a half line and then a line and then the Adam signs. That's 2 lines. Then that's a problem. It's a shaila. If there's 2 lines, you can always fill in that half line with whatever else you want to add, and then the next line you're going to make a summary, and we're going to think it's all real. It's a big problem. What's the shaila? So Taisul and the shaila is you left a line blank, and then the Adam for whatever reason didn't sign at the beginning of the line. They signed in the middle of the line. What happens in this case? So the line above, is that considered like the line, the half line? That's the line of what do you call it? Of the summary, if you want, what you want to call it. And the line above you will learn from, or we say no, the line below he couldn't. Well, the whole reason is because we're worried he'll add things. A half a line. The only way he can add things in a half a line is if he writes it very very small, and there'll be a red flag. You'll see a stand all of a sudden it's very small writing. Looks like it was put in later. So that's the shaila. How do we do that? Shita machzamai. Toshma coming there. It says in the Braise, Hirchik is Eidim Shnei. With this 2 lines possible is mashma. Hoshit is kosher, but 1.5 lines is kosher. Who said, Amos Sefer, look at the end. Shita achas kosher. 1 line only if it's 1 line gap is kosher, because we don't learn anything from the last line, so it doesn't matter. Because if he leaves it blank, fine. If he writes anything in there, who cares what he writes there? Because we're going to ignore it. Who mashma hashita machsa, but if it's 1.5 lines, he can squeeze something in the half line, or make the summary that'll half the line, and the line above that he writes normal. Possible is possible. We have this all the time. If from one part you can learn one way, from the other part you learn exactly the opposite, we say, what? It's not. We can't make a determination which is the right way to learn. So you need to find another raya. My havila. Bottom line, what's the din? Tashma coming here. Time we learned. Says in the Braisa as follows. There's a gap of 2 lines in the Eidim sign is a problem because the Malba, let's say the lender can fill in both lines. The very last line will make a summary, and the line above that he'll put in whatever he wants. You can't allow that to happen. Pachas mekan kosher. The Braisa clearly says less than that. What do you mean less than that? 1.5 lines is kosher, because if you want to squeeze something, a line into a half line, you'll have to write very small words. It'll be obvious that was added later on. Then the Braisa continues. Machlek is showing exactly what the Braisa is talking about, but we'll learn like the Rashbam learns that this is a continuation of this halacha, meaning it follows that there was a gap of 2 lines. There was a space of 2 lines. But what he did was he then put in witnesses into those 2 lines. You only need 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses, depending on a kusher or a regular get. But then he added more witnesses to that. We have a din. We hadn't gotten a concept called a get. Kerach or whatever, a bold get. What do you mean a bold get? Yeah, we have, let's say, we learn a get makusha. Get makusha is you write 1 or 2 lines and then you leave a blank of 1 or 2 lines and you fold it up. You write 1 line or 1 or 2 lines and then a blank on 2 lines, you fold it up. And every single fold up, and you stitch it together, you have witnesses signing on the back. What happens if you have more kshadim than witnesses? You have 5 folds and you only have 4 witnesses on the back. One of the folds has no witness. It's a big problem. So we say we're worried. What are we worried about? You have 4 witnesses there. What are you worried about? You know what we're worried about? I don't know if you remember this. Mishum kulchan, which means we're worried that maybe he originally organized to have as many witnesses as they're going to have ksharim, and he told them, now we don't need more than 3 witnesses on the back, which is Mahatayla 2, the Chacham 3. But he might have told the witnesses, kulchem, I want you all to be witnesses. And if he added the word kulchem, then if any one of them are not involved, the whole get is possible. You need, because he said kulchem. If he said any of you guys, then it doesn't matter. If he said kulchem, gzeidim mishum kulchem. So therefore, we made a takana, they should have more. But the extra, they don't have to be kosher. They can be machleki bananas of kiva. They can be a relative. Even though normally relative is possible disqualified, here it doesn't matter because it's only because of Gzedish Kulchem. According to Bananas, you can have a Gazlan, you can have an Eved, you can have anybody you want to sign on the back because it's only Gzedish Kulchem. So we don't want, because everyone knows that we're not going to make this person treat him elsewhere as a kosher aid because it's only in the back of it getting kosher and it's the extra names and so on and so forth. So that's the concept of get kosher. So same thing over here. Here we're talking about those gaps. What happened was in those gaps, he came along. So he says no. He says here that there was a big gap when the Adam signed. They realized, hey, they signed and there's too big of a gap. What do you do now? You cross out. You don't like crossing out. What do you do? So you're going to populate that empty space with names of other people. I'll get other Adam. Come, do me a favor, just sign. Not that they're really acting as Adam. And you use postula Adam. Postula Adam. Says Chizkiah. It's like, so there would not be, you fill the gap. So you filled up with Adim, extra Adim, but these Adim turned out to be that they were an apostle. They were a Kodev or apostle. It doesn't affect the kashrus of this document. It's still a kosher document. But the problem is, okay, as far as Adim is concerned, remember we said before, as long as you have your minimum kosher Adim, and normally we say if Nimtza Echmen Kodev Apostle, one of the Adim, you have 100 Adim. One of them, comes to testify as a relative, it disqualifies the whole group, as we'll see in Makkas. Over here, we just did it to fix up a gap. It's only a takana, so therefore it doesn't matter. However, but you had a gap of two lines. We said before, a gap of 2 lines is possible. But because you filled it with postula Adim, it's kosher. So the question is, since these postula Adim don't matter, why don't they matter? Because we're not relying on them. So it's as if they're non-existent. As if they're non-existent, the gap is still there. So why is it a kosher to get? So it comes out that postula Adim is better than no Adim at all. Where do you find such a concept? That if there was just a blank, we would say the star is possible. But now that you populated it with possible edim, but not with disqualified edim, it's all right. What's the logic in that? It's very interesting how the Gemara works here. So he says this. No problem. This proves chizki. Now, what's chizki is referring to? The Bryce is definitely continuing on the two lines. What chizki about the shtar makusha, but chizki is comment. Some of the Shem say he's talking about that case of get that I just told you before, but others say no. Chizki is commenting on this Bryce. That this Bryce, you have a blank, you filled it with edim, possible is kosher. Malu you filled that gap with these edim is kosher. I've altatama. It's a pella. If it's a blank, you tell me it's posla. You filled it with posla, which means you disqualify. You don't even listen to them. It's kosher. What's the logic of that? I'll tell you. I'll prove it to you. Shadi obvious sukkah. Look how the Gemara works it. They take the sukkah. If you have a gap, less than 3 tvachim, it's called lavud. We say that it's as if it's closed up, that you can sit there. So machlekes and nachrein. In other words, what's pshat when we say lavud less than 3 tvachim? Is the pshat is the gap is there. But it's all right because we say that a gap of less than 3 tvachim, it doesn't bother us. Or the pshat is there's no gap. It's as if it's closed up. Okay, so anyway, so if you have a gap of less than, so the gap 3 tvachim gap disqualifies the whole sukkah. But by a sukkah tan, but schach posel, if you put on there schach which is not kosher, let's say attached to the tree or whatever, schach which is makabel tumah, schach which is not meant to be used in a sukkah. If you have posel schach, poisel baba, up to 4 tvachim. If posel schach is as if it's non-existent, shouldn't be the same din 3 tvachim? It's as if it's not there. What does it show you? Putting something there, even if it's posel, in a way, is better than having nothing there at all. So putting pasla edim in that blank spot is better than having nothing at all. Nothing at all disqualifies the star. But if you have it pasla edim, it's still all right. Now the one has a question. We just established you have to have a blank. If you have space of 2 lines, it's not kosher the star. Now, when we write, you have margins. You have margins. I remember when I was growing up and these typewriter, there were never margins on the sides of the paper. If you remember, a page went from the top to the bottom. My mitzvah was 35 pages, 34 pages. And even those at A4 sheets were a little bit longer than A4 we have today. And there was no margins. No margin at all. So you have a lot of words. But generally you have a margin so that if it frails at the ends, you still have the teichen there. But you also have margins between the lines. Like I say for Torah, you have to have margins. Letters cannot be contiguous, cannot be touching. So when we say 2 lines, we mean 2 lines plus margins between the lines, or just the 2 lines. When we say a gap of 2 lines in a star, disqualifies the star because he can fill it. So hein the avidan, do we mean 2 lines and then the space above and then the space between and the space in the bottom? Or dilma hein lo avidan, we just mean 2 lines. No gaps in between, nothing, just 2 lines. Amar Rab Nachman says, by Yitzchak, Mistabra makes sense, the hein, the aviran. What does it mean? Them and the top. And I'll prove it to you. But if you're going to tell me in logic, it's just the 2 lines, you can't fill 2 lines in. The whole svara is that he'll fill in 2 lines. And the bottom line, he'll use it as a recap, and the line before that, he'll put in whatever he wants, but he can't. Because without a margin, well, right away we know that this is not, you can't write that way. Shita, and right away, well, no, this is not part of the star. Shita, what are you going to do? Pashut logic. If we're worried that he's going to fill it in, then do what people normally write. The line with a margin. Shmamino. Comes along Rab Shapsi, Omar, he said, not a very popular name, Omar Mashmei Dechiski. He said, Dechiski, Shnei Shitin Sha'amru. Another thing, when we measure the 2 lines, a sefer can write as small as you want. He's a trained writer. He can write small, big, and generally he writes smaller. But an ordinary person who's not very, they write, big letters. So when we say 2 lines, according to who do we measure? Now remember, most of the shtar is written by a sefer. That's what the document is. But what are we worried about? We're worried the Malva himself. He's not a sefer. So therefore we have to be more generous. And when we say 2 lines, it's bigger than the normal lines of a sefer, because we're to accommodate somebody who is a bit cunning, sly. My time, why the Messiah? If you want to cheat, you can go ask the safe, engage the safe. Do me a favor, I need to cheat over here. He'll do it at home in the privacy of his home, so he's not. So you got to give more space to say. When we say a get that has the two lines is puzzle, we're going to be makel and say that when we say puzzle, only if it's lined, that an ordinary novice can fill it in with two lines, which is a bit more than what normally two lines by sefer is. So the kamel, how much is that? Imagine you have to write a lamed, which the lamed, the top of the lamed sticks above the line, leaves like a whole line just for the top of the lamed, and the bottom of the chaf, the leg of the chaf needs a line. So in other words, when the get possible, there's a very big gap because it could be in the words. You have to entertain. There might be a lamed in the words. When you're writing in Hebrew, there might be a chaf in the words, and they used to write, the letters of Sefer. Interesting. When did our ksav start of all the base? Because it seems that when they used to write, because our lamed is no lamed. When they used to write like the Teda. Or maybe it's in the star. But why does the star have to be from Sabashut? A loan contract. Oh, but the Chaf Lamed right here. That's how it's been. That's what I'm saying. So when did it start that we started writing our language? We have more Sanhedrin. We'll see. There's Ksav Lebonoi. They used to have a different Ksav, but that was there.
It's called our Ksav. Script is called Meshita.
Yeah, but when did it all start?
I think it's a Rishonim one.
Yeah. Okay. So now, if you have the word Lech Lecha, and what happens if they're a line above the line? Yeah, you have a lamed at the top line. Let's say this guy is filling in. You have to imagine that there'll be a lamed on the top line, so he needs another line, a margin line above that to cover the lamed. Otherwise, it goes into the thing. And then you have the chaf going down, right? So you have lech. So the top line has a lamed going up. You need space there. He has a chaf here, but the line beneath is a lamed as well. So that you need an extra margin. You need a double margin in between. One to cover the leg of the chaf, and one to cover the top of the lamed of the bottom line. So basically, you need four margins. Says the Gemara. Four margins above the top line, one margin line below to cover the chaf, the leg of the chaf, and then you need a margin above the bottom line for the top of the lamed, and then a margin below that for the leg of the chaf again for the Aiden sign. So when does the get become puzzle? There has to be a pretty big gap between the end of the writing of the star and where the Aiden sign. He says no. We don't think that the word lech lecha are sitting atop of each other. That much we don't have to anticipate. But you have to anticipate the top line has a lamed, and you have to anticipate the bottom line will have a chaf somewhere. So you don't need. So between the two lines, you just need one margin, and you need a top one margin to cover the top of the lamed, and the bottom you need one margin. So you need three margins. So two lines and three margins. And three lines. And Avu Baruch ben Levi. Sorry.
Make sure they don't line up.
They don't line up. There's the chances of having for those letters and the show mamas being on top of each other are so remote. Sorry, it's too. You're being too generous. Remember, each one is being makel. If you have four avina, you're being very makel. That this star get an apostle unless you have this big.
In the siddur, when they have the lamed, you can sometimes have a lamed with a squashed down top if it has to fit below a word that hangs down.
Yeah, but you're not going to do anything that's going to arouse suspicion. You have a normal. You're forgery. The one thing in your mind
as inconspicuous as possible.
Exactly. Okay, so Rabu going Baruch ben Levi on one line. You have. We're not worried about two lines, a chaf on one line, a lamed another line. All you're worried about is on one line you're going to have a chaf and a lamed. So therefore, all you need really is one line and two margins. That's the gap. Anything above that is a problem. Okay, continue tomorrow, Mitchell, on this.